Welcome to the Queer Spirit Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Venegoni. Here we have conversations with artists, healers, and activists who enliven the LGBTQ communities and who empower our queer spirits to flourish. My guest today is queer entrepreneur and coach Rita Alma. Rita supports LGBTQ people to find careers that best nourishes their hearts. We talk about overcoming fears that keep you stuck in unfulfilling jobs and how to identify your superpowers to inspire your dream career. To find out more about Rita, go to brazenu.com. That's BRAZENYOU.com. Hi, Rita. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So, Rita, you do some really great and interesting work, which is helping LGBTQ people find new and more fulfilling work.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I would start out by having you share the story of what inspired you to begin doing this work.
Yeah, I guess there are a lot of different things that have happened in my life and over my career trajectory that influenced this decision. But I've been doing community and self-care work in queer communities for some time, probably for about 10 years now. And I would say my first sort of into this kind of work in the modality of coaching, at least, was when I hosted a workshop on community care for queer communities. And from then, we invited a community mediation organization in to do some educating on the process of mediation and conflict. From there, I entered the conflict mediation and conflict resolution work and eventually became a conflict coach. So I've been doing coaching in that sense for about 4 years now. And then recently, when I decided that I wanted to go off on my own and start my own business, I was thinking about, well, what kind of coaching do I want to do? And then I was thinking, well, I want to actually help people have the lives they want to have and have the freedom they want to have and do what they want to do and what fulfills them. And so career coaching felt like a really good fit for that kind of work. And that's what landed me there. And I was like, careers is a doorway to open people up to doing like the deeper work that is required to have a fulfilling and meaningful life. And so it really covers a lot of the things that I want to work with people on.
Yeah. And so were you hearing stories from friends or from community about people who specifically were queer identified who were feeling stuck or unfulfilled in the jobs that they had?
Definitely. That seems to be a pretty common thing. I think there's a statistic just for the general population that 70% or more of people are unfulfilled or unhappy with their careers. And so what I was noticing for, the people in my life and the people that I was talking to is people were often doing jobs that they weren't necessarily like using their best like attributes in. They weren't engaged in the way that they felt they were when they were in queer spaces. And, I had many friends in my personal life who were also having like these big challenges of what they wanted to do in terms of their career and feeling stuck and not unsure and feeling like the options were limited for them. And I would say that especially for LGBTQ people, there's a way that, we all in the general population, because of the way that work is set up in our current society, have to make compromises and people end up abandoning some of their dreams. And so we all do that to a certain extent. But I think for LGBTQ people in particular, there's this messaging still in our culture around, who we are or our desires are not good. And so that feels particularly important and relevant for LGBTQ plus people because that's a message that we're given a lot. And so we sort of have to make do with that and navigate that. And that means we can end up doing things that we're unfulfilled and unhappy with, so that we can put food on the table.
Yeah. Like we have to sacrifice our desires just to get our basic needs met or to be accepted by the general community to feel safe and just do what we need to do to live.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
So I know one of the things that you focus on in your work with your clients is what you call common career fears. And I wonder if there are specific fears that you see that keep queer people stuck in unfulfilling jobs.
Yeah, I think a few of them are there's this belief that if we can't do what we love and also make a living out of it. And so that's a really big fear of like, well, if I pursue my dreams, I have to give up on like basic things that I need, or I'll be like struggling through the whole time. So that keeps people, unable to really move in any direction, including, looking out for resources that can help them, because people sometimes can be so stuck and unaware of what's available to them that they won't even seek out that resource. So that's definitely one of them. I think there's also a place where people feel like it's going to be too hard and they can't do it. Like they can't leave the current job that they have. They can't put themselves in a new situation and move through it and then actually end up with something that's fulfilling and making them happy at the end of that. Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of fears. For me, what I try and help my clients do is sort of help them boil down, bottom line, what is the actual message that you're operating on here? And so a common one is I've spoken to many clients where they have fears about, not having their needs met or like financial insecurity and yada, yada. But when it comes down to it, there's this belief that they're not worthy of putting themselves first, and that they have to put everyone else's needs before their needs. And so that's what I try and get at with clients, because that sort of digs at the root of, what's fueling my behavior, what's fueling this need to stay in this job that I don't love. And that's really, deteriorating my mental health in some cases. So that's what I try and get at when I'm talking about fear with people. And so there's a bunch of big ones like that I can talk more about if you want.
Yeah. Well, I can really see how this ties back into what you were talking about, what brought you into this work, which was that self-care workshop, and how a lot of times people don't have proper self-care because they don't feel like their needs are worthy of being met. And so there are ways that pervades all aspects of themselves, including their work. So
yeah. And I think that that's a really common way that LGBTQ people learn to navigate their lives and in society is, for our survival, we've taken on a belief that everyone else's needs is more important than ours. And like most of us aren't even really conscious of what that is or what that looks like. So it's definitely a key piece when you're working with this community. And, what I want to say too is that this exists on a spectrum. So there are people that, are really operating heavily from this place of being. And then other people who aren't necessarily doing things that look like they're putting everyone's needs before theirs. And they look like they have things figured out on that, front. But to some level, we're all sort of doing it, I think.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And another thing that you talk about on your website is that fear is a necessary part of being on the right path. And I'm imagining that this is maybe a different kind of fear than the fear that we were talking about before, or not, I don't know. But I know that from the work that I do with my clients, I talk about there are different levels of anxiety that can actually be productive because they're motivating. And I'm wondering if that's the same kind of thing that you're talking about here.
It's a little different, actually. So I think what I mean when I talk about fear as an indicator that you're on the right path is that when you do things that are pointing you in a direction that you've never been on before, and that direction can be like, yes, I'm going to go after my dream. It's going to bring up feelings, because that's just, in our culture, we suppress all sorts of feelings. And so when we're in our way of doing things that are comfortable or safe for us, in a sense, we're not actually experiencing the extent of feelings. And so when we're doing things to take on a new challenge and to challenge the beliefs that we have about ourselves or the ways that we've kept ourselves safe, that's going to bring on fear. It's a necessary part of that path. I'll give you an example. When I first started this business, I decided to put on a couple of workshops actually called How Fear Can Lead You Home. And I've been working with things like fear for a long time and helping people navigate it and dealing with it in my own life and getting resource around it. And also talking of like giving workshops and presentations. So I had done this kind of work before, but it was my first workshop as a business and as a coach. And for the 3 or 4 nights before my first workshop, I was having nightmares and I wasn't able to sleep. I was so scared. And, thankfully I was like, okay, this is just a part of what is happening. This doesn't actually mean that, everyone's going to like leave my workshop running out of it being like, this is the worst workshop that I've ever had, or whatever else my nightmares were trying to convey to me. And I could sort of tell that that wasn't true, but I was really surprised at how intense the fear came up. And I realized, well, I am challenging beliefs about myself that I'm not smart enough, that I'm not capable enough, that I shouldn't be putting myself in front of a group of people as an authority. And so it makes sense that this is new and scary for me. And that was sort of a way that I could gauge that it was the right thing. Mm. Yeah.
So what are some other fears that you see with people that are showing them they're on the right path? I'm curious. Do you have any other examples from clients you've worked with?
I guess, in general, when people are feeling fear, it means that they have a desire and that what's in between them and their desire is fear. And so in that sense, that means, okay, I'm thinking outside of the box. I'm thinking along the right lines. And so that in general is an indicator for me that something's moving, right? Emotions are about like things in movement. And what I'm doing with a lot of the career coaching I'm doing is helping people like get unstuck or like get out of places where they feel stagnant. So there's that piece. And, in terms of, I think, I was working with a client yesterday who, when they first came to me, there was very little, other than the fact that this person hired me, there was very little willingness to acknowledge that leaving their current job was the right thing for them. And over time, that has become less and less a thing for this person in the sense that they're now actually exploring other possibilities and excited about those possibilities. And at the same time, there's still a place where, they're in this stage where they have all these possibilities and they're trying to figure out which of the 10 options that they've come up with for themselves are the right option. And there's fear there. And this person is like, doing as much research as possible under every option, trying to figure it out. And what I offered to them was the perspective of, sometimes you won't really know something unless you try something, or you at least make a decision to try something. So you can mentally decide to take on a path. And then only once you're starting to move along that road, can you have that awareness that, oh, this isn't right for me. But if you're staying in a place where you're just, trying to suss out all your options, that's not actually going to get you any further along. So that's another example of fear in the sense of, okay, now I can sort of decide to let go of this current job that I have. Okay, but now I need to actually make a choice. And, giving people the information that, just because you make a choice now doesn't mean it's irreversible. It does mean that whatever you do will give you information and resource and discovery for yourself. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that fear can manifest itself in all sorts of ways for people. And it sounds like for this person, it's about being so frozen, they may not even acknowledge the fear. It's kind of like a numbness, maybe. And I really like the example that you gave, because that's a similar example that I have used with clients who I'm trying to help them find solutions to certain problems. And maybe it's not finding a job. Sometimes it's finding a partner because they want to meet new people, or finding a new housing situation or something like that, that it's important to move forward, and no matter which direction you're in, because as soon as you move, you're going to have a different perspective. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you won't see the solution from the place where you are now. You only will find the solution as you move forward, right?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Like sometimes I tell people, and I could see it could be the same with a career path, and the same thing with finding a partner or a housing situation, that there are things out there that you might not even know exist, but you won't find them until you start to move forward. And I can see that, what you're saying is it's important to know what it is that you don't like in addition to what it is that you do want to do.
Right. Yeah. And for me, I explored the option of being a conflict mediator full-time and also a counselor full-time before I landed on coaching. But had I not done either of those things and, taken steps to meet with people in those fields and look up, make a decision to move forward somehow, I wouldn't have ended up with being no, actually coaching is what I want to be doing. So it was really important for me to have that process. And so I try and have my clients think in similar ways, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, I know one part of the process that you take your clients through is helping them identify their superpowers and authenticity. And I was really excited to see you use that term superpower, because I actually have worked with a marketing coach and she talks a lot about helping people find their superpower. So I'm curious to know how you work with that in your work with clients.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on the clients that I'm working with. I have a client who actually has a current business right now, and one of the questions that I asked her in sort of helping her identify her superpowers, which she then wanted to convey in her brand, was, well, what do clients say that you do for them? What do they say they love about you? What do they like? What can you do for people that, is a unique thing where people give you that feedback? I do a bunch of different exercises. So there's an exercise where I take clients, 50, 60, whatever years in the future, and they're at their end of life party. And I ask, notice what people are saying to you. They're here to celebrate you. They're thanking you. They're so grateful. Notice what is the impact that you've had on their lives, and what about you personally made that be true in terms of the impact. And so I'll sort of take clients through visualizations like that to help them sort of ground in their strengths. And then there are also, I use a tool called Strength Finders 2.0. I don't know if you've heard about it, but it's pretty common in I think it's common in the corporate world, which is interesting. When I found it, I loved it instantly, because when it's a test that you do, it's a 30-minute long test. And my results were all of the things that I was already doing or working. It gives you, you're talented in communicating with people. You're talented in connecting with people and gathering information about how things are all connected. And so it was really exciting for me, because I was great, I'm right on path. And here are the places where I'm really strong. So I use assessments like that too to help people gather that kind of information. And then I just also ask people questions of what do you love? When was the last time you felt completely joyful? What were you doing? What are the feedback that your friends and family give you about what they love about you? What are the things that when you do them, you feel powerful, you feel strong? What are the things that when you do them, time just goes by? So there are a lot of different angles where I try to come at it, from all these different angles, because first of all, just asking somebody, what are their superpowers? They may not be able to give you that answer. But so, one of the best things about being a coach is that you get to be in the moment with people. And so you get to sort of see what kind of question do they need to have the ability to answer in their power. So that's some of what I do.
And then as far as the authenticity piece, I imagine that also might tie back into some of the fear stuff, because I can see, especially working with queer people, there can be a fear of being more authentically themselves in a work environment where they may or may not know whether or not the environment is going to be safe or friendly for them, and wondering how that comes up in your work with clients and how you navigate that with them.
Yeah. So I guess what I would say about that is, interestingly, most of my clients so far have felt relatively safe in the workplace as far as their LGBTQ plus identity goes. In terms of like being more conscious of that, I think there's a way where we feel like we cannot, say the things we think or be who we are or talk about our lives or, show the gifts that we have for fear that they won't be accepted. And that ties back into the oppression of LGBTQ people. So it's almost like we're getting slammed with these messages on an ongoing basis, and now more covertly than ever before, that, something is wrong with us and who we are is not right. And so that sort of infiltrates into every part of our lives, I think. And so people are like, well, I have this like soft skill, like this ability to like talk to people and listen to people in ways that nobody else in my workplace is doing. And so, but I don't actually want to show that or like, cause any disruption into the ways that things are already being done. And so my work there is to give people permission to like show up as their, most authentic selves with those gifts that they have in ways that are both honoring themselves and also not going to cause a backlash to come on people in a way that is actually unsafe for them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And one thing you mentioned was about oppression in the workplace. And I know that there's another aspect of your business, which is going into different work environments to do education around that and empowerment. And I wonder if you want to share more about that.
Sure. Yeah. So the way that I think about the work that I'm doing is I'm bridging the skill set of coaching and how to authentically relate to people, how to listen to people, how to lead in ways that are both, like holding out a purposeful, meaningful vision and also mobilizing people to like come along with you. How to just have better workplace relationships and environments, and then bridging that in as a precursor to integrating meaningful diversity. So a lot of the work that I'm doing is actually about helping people like listen on deeper levels, helping people think more deeply about what it is that the experience of LGBTQ people is in the world and in the workplace. What are some of these big messages that we're carrying, like I've been talking about a lot, and how to like really get in there and think with us about how to not keep perpetuating that. So there's a heavy component of, self-awareness and self-discovery and like really leaning into our connections with people and using that as the forefront of the diversity work.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Great. So Rita, I wonder if you can give us any samples or stories of career moves you've helped some of your clients with, just to help some of our listeners get an idea of where you've moved people from and to.
Yeah. A couple things I'll say about that. I was having a conversation with a career coach a couple of months ago where he was telling me that a lot of people ask this question to a lot of career coaches because they're looking for like this way to measure the success of career coaching in terms of like, oh, where do people start and then where do they land job wise? And so I will talk about that, but I will say that the work that we do is so much more profound than that. And so helping people, like I had a client who did I have this like small debrief session available on my website that just gives people a little intro about what I do. And they walk away with like 2 tangible action steps to like move forward in whatever direction they need to. And so there was this person who did that session who's been stuck for years and like miserable. And then after like having this one-time session with me was like, I am like applying for these and these jobs and realizing that this is actually what I want. And like for years, I haven't even been able to consider that. And I've been completely stuck and overwhelmed and miserable. So yeah, let's see. In terms of the shifts people have made, I have clients who are working in like the world of LGBTQ, like nonprofits and like shifting cultural and political dynamics. and they're, realizing that some of the demands of that job are too much and they're not able to prioritize other things in their lives the way they want to. So I have somebody who's been sort of thinking about and making moves towards creating their own business in the world of like sexual education. So that's been really cool. I have someone else who's been working sort of as an artist and trying to make a full career out of becoming an artist. And so what's interesting too is that, when people think about being stuck in a career, and a lot of people are like, well, I don't even know what I would want to do. And the truth is that actually everybody has some idea of what they want to do. So a lot of my clients come to me already having a sense, but there's like a little opening and they're afraid. And so they come in being like, I've been doing this thing as a hobby and now I kind of want to take it on full time. And so those are some of the shifts that I'm helping people like actually build meaningful, sustainable careers out of the things that they've already been doing in their lives. Yeah, that's all I'll say for now.
Well, I imagine that there are people who have hobbies or interests in something and they don't even know that there are jobs out there that they could use those skills or those interests to make money. And so I imagine that, the work with you can help people open their minds to different possibility. Or as you said, maybe it's not even about a career shift. Maybe it's just about a mindset shift within their current career. They may be unhappy within a particular position, but through just shifting their mindset around something, maybe it doesn't mean leaving their career per se, but just having a slightly different position within the same company or job that they have.
That's right. And a lot of the work that I do also focuses on, not just, what do you want to do and what you love to do, but what role do you want to play? Like one of the questions that I'll ask people before they sign on with me is like, what is the world that you want to see? And what role do you want to have in making that world come into fruition? Mm-hmm. So thinking about, sometimes people are in the right fields and like doing the work that actually fulfills them, but not in the way that would fulfill them. And so sometimes it's just about helping them create that shift. And then what I'll also say is, I think especially in today's economy, everybody is, or more people are thinking outside the box in terms of like, oh, okay, I can make this into a career. I can make this into a business. And helping people really hone in on, what are those strengths? What are the things that they're willing to do that work for to then make a career out of it? And I think it's the time to do it. People are building all sorts of businesses and careers off of their like personal brand and, what their unique contribution and value is. So it's an exciting time for that.
Mm-hmm. So Rita, can you share with us a person, practice, or experience that has supported your queer spirit to flourish?
Yeah, I would say probably the most impactful and influential thing that I've been able to do and figure out to give me access to the kinds of things that I'm doing and the person that I'm coming more and more into is the ability to use and seek out the resource of just having people listen to you. And, I do this peer counseling where you just have access to like as many people as you can connect with. And basically you take turns back and forth listening to each other and doing whatever you need to do to have whatever healing process needs to happen so that you can move into more and more of yourself and more of your power. And then figuring out from that, how to build the kind of intimacy in my relationships where I can really show myself and have other people show and or share things with me as they need to, and being able to build that intimacy in relationships to sort of carry you through the hard things that you need to do. And I think especially as LGBTQ people, there's a way that we've figured out a lot of things, including the concept of chosen family and having like deep, meaningful relationships with people outside of the heteronormative constructs of like, you marry somebody and then that's your person. But we're actually like, no, actually, it's really hard to do things, and especially to do hard things in our lives without knowing that we're like fully loved and fully supported and in this together, and that people are rooting for us in ways where we get to be ourselves and we get to take risks and we get to make leaps. And so just having that space to like be vulnerable, have people sort of witness my emotions and my process, and all the while knowing that what's happening is exactly what needs to happen and I don't need to be fixed and I'm not having a breakdown or yada, yada, yada. That has been pretty instrumental in my life in many ways, including in the flourishing of my queer spirit and in the launching of my career. And I would not have been able to figure out the things that I figured out without that. So,
Yeah, the power of being listened to and heard by community is really potent.
Totally. And listened to in ways where people are really listening, if that makes sense. You know, I think in our world, we don't really get much opportunity to be listened to, or we don't get taught how to really listen to people. And I think because of that, everybody is so desperate to be listened to that we lose the ability to listen to each other. Mm-hmm. And so that's a key thing in this work, in anyone's personal liberation and in liberation as a whole for all of society. I think that's really important.
Yeah. So Rita, how can people find you and connect with you and learn more about your work if they want to work with you?
Yeah, so they can check out my website. It's www.brazenu.com. And I also have social media. I'm on Instagram and on Twitter under Brazen You, and then on Facebook under Brazen You Coaching.
Great. Well, I will have those links on the show notes for people so they can find them there as well.
Thanks so much. This was really great. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Thanks for being here. Do you feel lost or stuck? Or are you alone on your healing journey? If you're seeking guidance or support, I'm here to help. I offer online coaching and counseling for queer spiritual folks from all over. Schedule your free consultation with me now by going to queerhealingjourneys.com. I look forward to supporting you on your path. To find the resources we discussed today, find the show notes at thequeerspirit.com. And if you enjoyed the show, remember to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes. This will help us reach and support more queer people all over. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.